There's a special kind of heartbreak that doesn't come from losing someone. It comes from watching them change and realizing you don't know when to stop loving the person they used to be. Because they're still here. Their number still works. Their face still shows up in your memories. Their name still lives in your mouth like a habit you can't break. But the version of them you loved, that version is gone. And no one tells you how to grieve a person who didn't die, but disappeared anyway. I didn't understand that at first. When things started changing, I thought it was temporary. A bad season. Stress. Life. I thought if I stayed patient enough, if I loved hard enough, he would come back to himself. I thought love was supposed to do that, bring people home. So I kept loving him like the old him was still standing behind his eyes. I kept reaching for warmth that wasn't there, and I didn't realize how much I was breaking myself until one night I heard him laugh at something on his phone, some random video, and the sound was so unfamiliar that my chest tightened. Not because the laugh was cruel, because it didn't belong to the man I knew. It wasn't the laugh that used to soften the room. It was sharper, faster, empty, like it was practiced, like he had learned to laugh without feeling anything. I sat there in the same room with him and suddenly felt like I was visiting a stranger. And I remember thinking, when did you become someone I have to miss while you're still here? That question doesn't leave once it arrives. It becomes the background noise of everything. You start noticing the differences. The way his tone changed, the way his patience got thinner, the way his kindness started coming with conditions. You start remembering the old version of him like it's a sacred thing, because it was. There was a time he used to look at me like he liked me, not just loved me, liked me. He used to ask questions and actually listen to the answers. He used to reach for my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. He used to say my name softly, like saying it made him happy. And now he said my name like punctuation, a word to get my attention. Nothing more. At first, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I was boring now. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe love naturally loses its glow and I was childish for expecting warmth. So I tried harder. I learned his new moods the way you learn a new language. I learned what to avoid, what to keep light, what to swallow. I started cutting pieces off myself to fit the space he was willing to give. But no matter how careful I became, the distance kept growing. Because the truth was simple, I wasn't fighting to keep love alive. I was fighting to keep a memory alive. And memories don't respond. They don't hold you back. They don't choose you. They just sit there beautiful and cruel, reminding you of what you can't get back. I remember the day I realized the old him was truly gone. It wasn't a huge betrayal. It was small, which is how these things usually are. We were in the car. The sun was low, turning everything gold, and for a second I thought, maybe this could feel like before. I reached over and played a song he used to love, a song that used to make him smile and tap his fingers on the steering wheel, like joy was a reflex. The first notes played. I glanced at him, already smiling. He didn't react. His eyes stayed forward. His face stayed flat. After a few seconds he sighed and said, "Can you change that?" I laughed a little at first, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. "That song," I started. He cut me off. "I'm not in the mood." His voice wasn't loud, but it was final, like a door shutting, and something inside me, something old and tender, felt embarrassed. Not because the song was bad, because I had reached for connection and been swatted away like it was annoying. I stared out the window and tried not to cry. Then I heard myself say something I hadn't planned. "You used to love this song." He didn't look at me. He just said, "People change." 3 words, and I know he meant it as a fact. But to my heart, it sounded like a warning. Stop expecting the old me. Stop asking for what used to exist. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't trying to come back. He wasn't lost, he had moved. And I was still standing in the old place, calling his name. After that, I became obsessed with timing. Not in a crazy way, in a grieving way. I kept trying to find the moment it happened, the exact day the version of him I loved slipped away. Because if I could locate it, maybe I could undo it. That's what grief does. It negotiates. It tries to reverse time. It tries to bargain with reality. I replayed memories like film, the weekend trips, the jokes, the way he used to hold my face in his hands when he kissed me. And then I compared them to the present. The present where he answered with one word. The present where his attention always belonged somewhere else. The present where I had to earn softness. He didn't become cruel all at once. He became indifferent. And indifference is colder than anger, because anger at least means you matter enough to ignite emotion. Indifference means your background. I tried to talk to him one evening. I chose the timing carefully after dinner, when he seemed calm, when the room felt quiet enough for honesty. I sat beside him and said softly, "Do you feel different lately?" He stared at the TV. "What do you mean?" he asked, already tired. I swallowed. "I miss you," I said, "even when you're right here." He finally looked at me, and his eyes didn't soften. They narrowed, like I was accusing him of something. "I'm here, aren't I?" he said. That sentence sounds reasonable to someone who has never begged for presence in a relationship. But I knew the truth. Being here isn't the same as being with me. So I said, I miss how you used to be with me." He leaned back like he was done with the conversation before it began. "You're living in the past," he said. And my throat tightened. Because he was right, I was. But not because I wanted to, because the past was the only place I still felt loved by him. He stood up, grabbed his phone, and said, "I don't have energy for this." Then he walked away, and something in me cracked not loudly, quietly, like ice shifting underfoot, because I realized he wasn't just different. He didn't care that I was hurting. That's when you begin to understand the most devastating part of loving someone who's changed. The loss isn't only who they were. The loss is the fact that they no longer notice you losing them. I started grieving in private. I would cry in the bathroom with the water running. I would stare at old photos when he wasn't home. I would lie awake at night, remembering the warmth that used to live in our ordinary moments. And I hated myself for missing him, because missing him felt like disrespecting myself. But I couldn't stop, because I wasn't missing the man who dismissed my feelings. I was missing the man who used to pull me close and say, "Tell me everything." I was missing the man who used to look at me like he had time. And the cruelest part? Sometimes he would still act like that briefly, just enough to confuse me. He'd kiss my forehead one morning, and I'd feel my heart lift like a starving thing catching a scent. He'd laugh at one of my jokes, and I'd think, "There he is." He'd hold me for 10 seconds longer than usual, and I'd start believing again. Then he'd go cold again, and I'd realize I wasn't seeing him. I was seeing a flicker, a reflex, a leftover, and I was building a whole future out of leftovers. That's what it means to love a ghost in a living body. You keep treating the present like it's temporary. You keep waiting for the old version to return. You keep telling yourself, this isn't him. He's just going through something. But one day you have to ask the hardest question. What if this is him now? That question terrified me, because if this was him now, then my love had nowhere to land. And that meant I had to let go not of a relationship, but of a person who only existed in memory. It's easy to break up with someone who hurts you. It's harder to break up with someone who used to heal you. I stayed longer than I should have, thinking love could resurrect what was gone. But love isn't a time machine. Love can't reverse choices. Love can't force someone back into tenderness if they don't want to live there anymore. And I learned that the hard way. The final moment wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a big betrayal. It was something so ordinary that it felt almost insulting. Because ordinary moments are where love is supposed to live. It was late at night. I was sitting in bed, scrolling through nothing, pretending I wasn't waiting for him to come to bed. He finally walked in, brushed his teeth quickly, climbed in without a word, and turned away. No good night. No hand reaching back. No softness. Just his back. And something inside me, something exhausted, finally stopped trying. I whispered his name, not as a demand, as a last attempt at connection. "Can we talk?" I asked. He didn't turn around. "What?" he said, voice flat. My chest hurt. "I don't know how to say this," I whispered, "but I feel like I'm grieving you while you're still alive." That sentence hung in the air like smoke. He finally rolled over, and for a moment, I saw irritation, not concern. "Why do you talk like that?" he said. "You're always so intense." Intense. That's what he called my love. Like depth was a flaw, like honesty was an inconvenience. Tears gathered in my eyes, but I kept my voice steady. "I miss you," I said. "I miss the version of you who used to love me like I mattered." He stared at me, expression unreadable. Then he said the words that ended it. Not because they were cruel, because they were empty. He said, "That version isn't coming back." I didn't move. I didn't breathe for a second. Because those words weren't just an answer, they were permitted. Permission to stop begging. Permission to stop waiting. Permission to stop loving a memory. My eyes burned, and I whispered, "Okay." That was it. Not a scream, not a fight, just a quiet acceptance that felt like a death, because something died in that moment. Not him. The hope. The dream. The future I kept trying to build from the past. He turned away again like the conversation was finished, and I lay there, facing the dark, feeling the kind of grief that has no place to go. The next morning, the world still moved. Sunlight still came in, cars still passed, he still made coffee like nothing happened. And that made me realize something else. For him, the version that no longer existed had been gone for a long time. He had already adjusted. I was the one still living with a ghost. I packed quietly that day. Not in anger, in mourning. He watched me from the doorway and said, "So that's it?" I paused, holding a folded shirt. And I felt tears rise again, not because I didn't love him, because I did. I loved him enough to stay through the transformation. I loved him enough to keep hoping. I loved him enough to grieve him while he was still in the room. I looked at him and said, softly, "I can't keep loving a version of you that no longer exists." His face shifted, something like discomfort, something like guilt that didn't know what to do with itself. He opened his mouth, then closed it, and that was his answer too. Because people who want to keep you will argue. People who want to choose you will fight for you. But people who have already left emotionally, they just watch. I carried my bag to the door and stopped for a second. My hand on the handle, my chest tight, and I realized I wasn't just leaving him. I was leaving the part of myself that kept trying to resurrect something dead. I turned back and said one last thing, not as a speech, as closure for my own heart. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for," I whispered, "and I hope one day you realize how rare it was to be loved the way I loved you." Then I walked out. Outside, the air was cool. My hands trembled. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel for a long time without turning the engine on. I cried until my face felt swollen, not because I wanted him back, because I had to bury someone who was still alive. And that is one of the loneliest funerals in the world. For a while after I left, nights were brutal, because nights brought him back. Not the real him, the old him, the version I loved, the one who used to say my name softly, the one who used to make the world feel safer. And the grief came in waves. I would wake up at 2 a.m. and feel his absence like a hand pressing on my chest. I would whisper, "I miss you," into the dark, not because I wanted to return, but because my heart needed to say goodbye more than once. Goodbyes don't always happen in a single moment. Sometimes you have to say goodbye every night until your body believes it. And slowly, painfully, I began to understand. Missing him didn't mean I made the wrong choice. It meant the love was real. And real love leaves marks. Not wounds forever. Marks, scars. Proof that you lived and felt deeply. One night, months later, I looked at an old photo of us and didn't collapse. I just stared quietly and felt a gentle sadness. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I smiled, not because it didn't hurt, because I had survived it. I had survived loving someone who changed. I had survived grieving a version of him. And I had learned the hardest lesson. You can love someone with your whole heart and still have to let them go when they stop being someone you can reach. If you're listening to this and you recognize this pain, if you're missing someone who's still alive, if you're still waiting for the old version to return, let me say it softly. You're not foolish. You're not weak. You're grieving. And grief is love with nowhere to go. Be gentle with yourself. Because one day, the version of you that is hurting right now will become a proud version. Proud that you stopped begging for a memory. Proud that you chose reality. Proud that you loved deeply and then loved yourself enough to let go. And when that day comes, you won't feel empty. You'll feel quiet, not the painful quiet, the peaceful one, the kind that finally lets you sleep.